Hi, I'm Alex Skidmore, Creative Director on Bloodlines 2. Yeah, we announced that Bloodlines 2 is going to come out fall 24, and the Chinese room is making it. And we're feeling, well, we've had a hell of a day. Euphoric and potentially also coming out the other side. But yeah, it's been emotional.
So what are some of the challenges when you're handed a project that another studio has been working on and have to continue their work?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say we're continuing their work. Right. So when we took it on in 2021, so there's a bit of a time gap between it sort of stopping and us starting, we set aside, well, what would we do with Vampire the Masquerade? What's the Chinese room's answer to a vampire action RPG? So it is our story, our world, our gameplay, and we're very much focused on how could we faithfully adapt the 5th edition of VTM into a gameplay experience, right? It's a bit like adapting, a book to a film. You have to make certain creative choices, but it's very much our vision. But we did benefit from all the great work that had already been done on Seattle, right? So we've got some of the characters in the trailer. They pre-existed. We've given them different backgrounds, different names, different personalities and stuff, but they pre-existed. And also certain hero locations in Seattle, such as this one. This is the Macon bar in the game, so it's in the trailer as well.
So you don't have to. So in a sense, you're not starting from scratch. You do use some of the other stuff that's been created.
Yeah, just Seattle. We were like, well, why not? It was there already, and the more we looked at it, it was like, yeah, it seems a really cool place to set a vampire game.
The only other game I can think of that ever did that was Prototype, I think, right? Prototype took place in Seattle, I believe.
Yes, I think it's underused a bit by games, Seattle, and then you're coming here, and it is a city, sort of established in the mid 1800s. So it's sort of got some old, got a lot of new. So it's an interesting place to tell a vampire story because you also have the old meets the new.
So let's talk about some of the gameplay mechanics and the design of taking a tabletop game and making it a first-person RPG.
Yeah, so our creative process starts with the 5th edition, and then we'll take whatever clan, I can't say which clans, right, and go, how do we make that into an action experience? So obviously on a tabletop RPG, you're sat there. If you want to do something, you can open the book, turn to the page, look at the little rules, roll the dice. You don't have time for that in an action RPG. You've got to be thinking on your feet, moving fast. So that's where we put a lot of our efforts. How can we make those fantasies and those experiences a fluid action experience where you can just stay immersed? And that's one of the reasons we also chose first person, to make it just really immersed. You can just be in that fantasy.
You're experiencing the world rather than being an observer, I think, when at the top over a game. It's still great games, just I want to be in it,
Yes, exactly. You're in it. You're in the world of darkness. You are in this secret world in Seattle that's sort of hiding in plain sight.
So how does your team go about taking spells and abilities out of the books and turning them into an in-game mechanic, and how do you decide what's going to make the cut and what might not work?
Absolutely. There is some trial and error. And we work very closely with the World of Darkness team. So we did one just last week, just before we came out, the last clan. We were sort of bouncing back and forth. There's a lot in there, so you have a lot to choose from, and then we pick the sort of key ones that we think are really key to the fantasy, and sort of also the gameplay experience, right? As players are coming in, one person might want the up-close sort of action experience. You can see in the trailer, it focuses quite a lot on that. Another one might want a more distant, strategic, I'm the prowling in the dark, right? So we try to pick abilities that will create, sort of package around that you can play. We do, as we say, make some creative choices. We get to add some things to the IP in order to get it to work for an action game. And Paradox is really, World of Darkness are really supportive of that.
There's, the thing I love hearing about this stuff, especially when it has a pen and paper archetype, there's what's accurate and then there's what's fun. And if what's accurate isn't fun, you have a problem.
Rather than being accurate, we focus on being faithful, right? So we want you to feel it, right? Even if we've had to, bend it slightly or whatever to get it to be as impactful and as cool as we can in an action game experience. A visual medium that you're playing live.
Can you elaborate more on creating my own vampire? I'm a big fantasy guy, right? You can play a mage, but wait a minute, what type of mage? Frost mage, fire mage, lightning mage, arcane mage?
Exactly, and with Vampire the Masquerade, there isn't just one type of vampire, right? You've got all the clans, each of them offering a different experience. And I'd say even within those, so when you pick a clan, there's still multiple ways to play within that clan. can't really say much more about that yet. We'll be talking about that all more soon as we talk about the clans. But definitely a question we're asking players is, what kind of vampire are you, and how do you hunt?
So for someone who's maybe followed this game religiously since its inception, since its original announcements, what have you done that you can talk about, and that's the key word there, that you've changed from the original design?
And one thing is on my hand and on my t-shirt and in the trailer. But I think the biggest sort of announce we've done that's new, in the trailer you'll see it says, an elder has awoken. That elder is you. This is the first time in VTM you get to play an elder. If you have the 5th edition book, you can't be an elder. They're off the books. So we thought, wouldn't that be great to play as an elder? So that's kind of like our story USP, it's part of our experience USP, and it's something we're adding to the franchise, kind of defining the playing an elder experience.
Now, the coolest thing about this world is it's a modern type of world, but you have supernatural elements. What does that open up for your team creatively when you're able to go down that rabbit hole of supernatural elements?
One of the reasons we really like the Vampire the Masquerade IP is it's very grounded, right? It's the whole what if vampires were real. Sort of a way we it's quickly explained to people. It's kind of like John Wick, right? There's this whole other world hidden among you.
The world building.
Yeah, and it's grounded. And at VTM, we pride ourselves on making, grounded, believable, authentic experiences, sort of mature storytelling. So this, for us, is probably one of the main ways we would ever tell a vampire story or something that's almost fantasy. Because it isn't, because it's grounded, because it's believable. Yeah. The whole conceit is that there could be vampires all around us right now. I mean, potentially there's one there with Sean. So it's a perfect match for the kind of stories we like to tell at the Chinese Room.
Now, the book is huge, obviously. Your 5th edition of multiple editions, multiple characters, multiple creatures, classes, enemies, How do you go about deciding what enemies you're going to fight in the game and what would be fun and what wouldn't be fun?
I mean, our first lenses are what's right for our world, so what's right for Seattle and what's right for the story we're telling. So that's where we pick, the story's about this at this point, we should be using this enemy. So the story's about this at this point. So they all serve the larger story we're trying to tell and the story the player is playing a part of, but it is an RPG story, which for us is really exciting as the Chinese Room. This is our first time doing an RPG story. So doing a story where the player is part of it, the player is the star of it. That's also one of the reasons we liked going with an elder, because then they're a super important character in the story. They have a past, but that's a past you are also exploring as the player. So, yeah, it's great.
A big thing in RPGs across all boards is always pacing. How do you deal with pacing in your game and to make sure that you're not leveling up too fast or not leveling up too slow and making sure that they're experiencing the world and not just rushing through everything trying to min-max, I guess is the way to say.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is in the player's hands, their speed, but we try to, there's the we often say the golden path in games. There'll be the path that people are typically walking on, and we try to put things to tempt you off it as you go to kind of slow you down. But ultimately it's up to you, the player. What kind of player are you? How fast do you want to play it? How slow? Do you want to smell the roses? Do you want to go around Seattle, check what's in that back alley? That's up to you.
And the last, and you guys have a release date. When does the game come out?
It comes out fall 24.
You have to wait another year, a whole another year.
We're going to have a year of fun conversations as we reveal everything. And there's a lot to talk about, including this.
Looking forward to it. And in the meantime, where can people find more information about your game?
So we have a website, bloodlines2.com, but you can also look up the Chinese Room and all our channels. And there's a trailer to watch today, including a trailer that talks about the Chinese Room and how we work on the title.
And then just as a fun bonus question, because you're creative director, what are some of the challenges when doing like a single player game as opposed to like a game as a service?
So for me personally, I've worked both. I think one of the pleasures of working on a single player game is the being able to craft every moment and know there'll be someone engaged and thrilled and watching it there. Games as a service, I think, is just almost another ballpark, right? So Chinese Room, we're very much about those single player experiences, strong single player narratives.